Tense times in Venezuela as violence erupts in the midst of competing rallies between government supporters and opposition protesters. Demonstrations have been taking place on the streets of many of the country's major cities. Violent crime and a weak economy have been the main reasons for the protests. Venezuela is the country that has the world's largest reserves of crude oil, but its economy has been in dire straits. Rising prices and a scarcity of food and supplies have caused public uproar. The government of Nicolas Maduro blames the U.S. and private companies for worsening the economic situation. Correspondent Martin Markovits reports on a nation divided from Caracas.
Opposition leaders and students have convened anti-government demonstrations across Venezuela. As the country struggles with a faltering economy and rampant crime, they are trying to send a clear message to President Nicolas Maduro: step down.
They're causing hate and war amongst our brothers. They're killing young people, generating inflation, shortages, and unemployment. Young people now who graduate from the university can't find work because there are no jobs.
The slew of problems facing Venezuela is serving as a rallying call for many of the president's hardline critics to take to the streets. And while their demonstrations are meant to be peaceful, the protests often end in violence when students clash with security forces. As many demonstrators are now hell-bent on regime change.
We're going to continue in the streets until he resigns. And if he doesn't, we're going to kick him out of Miraflores.
Outraged, Maduro has responded with a crackdown on the protesters and called for rallies of his own. Many here blame the opposition for inciting violence, an attack, they say, on the country's poor.
In Venezuela, there is a fight of classes between rich and poor, and the rich don't offer a proposal. They speak of peace and security, but they burn ambulances and police cars. So what peace and security are they offering?
Venezuela has long suffered from bitter divisions, often with both sides ignoring one another completely, only focusing on their political base. But the latest strife comes as the country's economy is starting to crumble. Despite having the world's largest oil reserves, Venezuela suffers from extremely high inflation, over 56%, while shortages of consumer staples are now common.
We're reaching a limit. Everything is too expensive.
A lot of things are not available.
Long lines like this are typical across the country. Consumers often have to wait hours just to find basics like milk, sugar, and even toilet paper. At times, some goods are in such short supply that shoppers literally fight over them.
The price of fish has been raised 3 times. Before, a kilo of fish cost 50 bolívares, and now 180 bolívares. We can't pay that.
The economic turmoil is affecting the country at large. Critics say 15 years of socialist policies have caused high prices and empty store shelves. But the president blames business owners, saying they're conspiring with his political foes. In an effort to combat soaring inflation, he has since forced businesses to lower their prices. In some instances, even sending in the army to enforce the price slashing. But beyond the rising costs in the country, Venezuela's biggest worry is crime. Last month's murder of the actress and beauty queen Monica Spear shook the country to its core. While spending the Christmas holidays in her home country, the 29-year-old former Miss Venezuela and her ex-husband were shot and killed by armed robbers after their car broke down on a dark highway. Spear's death shed light on what is already one of the most violent countries on earth. According to local NGOs, the country saw nearly 25,000 murders last year. Police officers often find themselves undertrained and outgunned.